She wasn't looking at him. Not even a glance. That made it even more real for Samuel. In his world, everyone stared, everyone watched, because everyone wanted something. But she didn't. She had helped him and moved on, like it was the most natural thing to do. That stayed with him. He turned back to the window, but his thoughts stayed behind with her. Something about her presence, simple, quiet, and kind, kept echoing in his mind. The bus ride felt slower, as if time was stretching out just to give him space to think. Not about business or meetings or the headlines he usually made, but about this girl who had no idea who he was, and yet offered him help without hesitation. When the bus came to another stop, Grace stood up. She walked past him, calm, steady. He didn't know why, but his chest tightened. Something inside him didn't want her to walk away without a word. Without knowing her name. Without telling her thank you. "Wait," he said softly. She paused and turned, surprised. "Yes." Their eyes met again. His voice was low, sincere. "Thank you. You don't know how much that meant." She smiled gently. "It's okay. Everyone needs help sometimes." Then she stepped down and disappeared into the crowd outside. The bus doors closed behind her with a hiss, and the engine hummed back to life. Samuel sat still, watching the space where she'd been, unsure why it mattered so much, but knowing it did. The ride continued, but his thoughts didn't. Even when he finally reached his estate, the large gates swinging open and guards greeting him with confusion, all he could think about was her. Inside his mansion, surrounded by silence and luxury, the memory of the girl with nothing but kindness weighed more than everything he owned. He lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Her face kept coming back. Not because of beauty or charm, but because of something deeper. Her calm, her honesty, the way she saw him not as a name or a figure, but as a person who needed help. The next morning, long before anyone else was awake, Samuel stepped out again. No calls, no suits, no car. Just him and a quiet determination. He returned to the same streets, eyes scanning every face. But she wasn't there. Disappointed, he began to walk, thinking maybe it had been a once-in-a-lifetime moment, until he caught the scent of warm bread and sugar in the air. His eyes followed it to a small bakery tucked between buildings. He stepped inside. There she was, behind the counter, arranging trays, focused and unaware of him. For a moment he just stood there. Then she looked up, her face surprised. "You again?" she asked. He nodded, smiling. "Yeah." "What are you doing here?" He could have said the truth, that he had been looking for her since last night, that he hadn't been able to think about anything else. But instead, he just shrugged and said, "Thought I'd grab a coffee." Grace tilted her head slightly, amused. "You didn't have to say thank you again." He smiled. "Maybe not. But I wanted to." She reached for a mug and poured him a drink. "I didn't do anything special." "You did more than you know," he said, his voice quiet. She set the cup in front of him, her tone light but honest. "You still don't owe me anything." "Then let me just enjoy a cup of coffee from the girl who reminded me what real kindness looks like," he said. She gave a small smile, folded her arms, and leaned gently on the counter. "That's a pretty expensive thank you." He chuckled. "And worth every drop." She laughed quietly. And in that moment, two strangers, from two different worlds, stood across from each other, connected by nothing but a bus ride, a few coins, and a shared understanding that sometimes, the smallest acts can carry the most meaning. It wasn't really about the coffee. It was the calm, The feeling of stepping into a space where no one expected anything from him, where he could just be Samuel, not the man with a company to run or a reputation to protect. Grace never asked too many questions. She served him with quiet grace and returned to her work. Her silence was never cold. It was comforting. Each day, he stayed a little longer, sometimes reading a newspaper he didn't really focus on, other times just watching the way she moved behind the counter. There was a rhythm to her steps, a care in how she handled every tray, every cup, every customer. No show. No pretending. Sometimes they talked. Just small things. Weather, the bread of the day, her favorite snacks to bake. Once, he asked if she ever took a break. She laughed and said, "Only when I can't feel my feet." That was Grace. Worn out but never complaining. One afternoon, the bakery was quiet, and Grace brought over 2 pastries and placed one on his table. "Try this. It's new," she said. Samuel picked it up and took a bite. "This is really good," he said, surprised. "I know," she smiled playfully. "I made it." He laughed. "Then you've been holding out on me all this time?" "I didn't know if you had a sweet tooth," she replied, walking back behind the counter. He watched her go, warmth settling in his chest. These little moments, were becoming the best part of his days. Her world was nothing like his, yet somehow, it felt more real than anything he'd known. That evening as he left the bakery, she called out softly, "Hey, Samuel!" He turned. "Yeah. Thanks for not asking too much." He smiled. "Thanks for not needing to know everything." And just like that, something unspoken passed between them. A mutual respect, a growing connection built not on status or secrets, but on stillness, honesty, and something that neither of them dared name yet. He walked away slowly, but his heart stayed behind a little. And Grace, watching him from the doorway, felt a small shift inside her too. She didn't know what it was exactly, but she didn't mind waiting to find out. She's real. Those words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Samuel met his mother's stare, unwavering. "That's exactly why I care about her," he said quietly. "She sees me, not the name, not the company, not the wealth. Just me." Mrs. Stone stepped forward, her voice controlled but edged with frustration. "And what does that matter when the world won't see it that way? You'll become a headline. People will question your judgment, your strength. She'll be a scandal, not a partner." Samuel shook his head. "Then let them talk. I've spent my whole life being what everyone expected. I'm tired of pretending." She stared at him, searching his face for hesitation, but there was none. He wasn't her little boy anymore. He was a man, and he had chosen his truth. "She will never be accepted in this circle," she said finally, voice tight. "Then maybe it's time we stop caring about circles," he replied, walking past her toward the door. "You taught me to lead, Mother. Now let me lead my own life." He stepped out, leaving her in silence. Meanwhile, Grace stood behind the bakery counter, her apron dusted with flour, but her mind far from pastries. She hadn't heard from Samuel since their lunch at his office. Her emotions had been tangled since then. Gratitude, confusion, even fear. She couldn't stop thinking about how different their worlds were, how easily she could lose herself trying to find a place in his. When the bell above the bakery door jingled, she looked up expecting a customer, but there he was. Samuel. No suit, no driver, just him, holding a small white paper bag. "Hey," he said softly. Grace wiped her hands and stepped forward. "You okay?" He nodded. "Yeah. I brought you something." He handed over the bag. Inside was a pastry box. She opened it slowly. Inside were 2 delicate croissants. "Did you bake these?" He smiled. "Tried. Might taste more like regret than butter though." She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "Why?" "Because I wanted to show up for you. Not just buy things or send cars. Just be here." Grace looked at him, the corners of her mouth lifting. "That's a terrible croissant, by the way." "I figured," he replied. "But I'm better at learning than baking." She leaned against the counter. "And what exactly are you trying to learn?" "How not to lose the only person who made me feel human again." Her eyes met his. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," he said. "And that's why it matters. You gave, even when you had little. You saw me when you didn't know who I was. Now let me do the same." Grace was quiet for a while, her fingers brushing the edge of the box. Then she sighed softly. "I'm scared, Samuel. Not of you, but of all that comes with you. I don't want to be your secret or your mistake." "You never were," he replied gently. "But I get it. So, let's not rush. Let's take it slow. Coffee, conversation, terrible croissants. Whatever you're comfortable with." She smiled then, a real one. "Okay. But next time I bake." He grinned. "Deal." And in that small bakery, amid the smell of sugar and fresh bread, the world narrowed to just the two of them. One step at a time with no expectations, just something honest beginning to grow one afternoon. As Grace wiped the last bit of flour from the counter and prepared to close up early, the scent of dust from the nearby construction drifted in through the open window. She glanced outside, thinking of tomorrow's early delivery and how much she still had to prepare. That's when the doorbell chimed softly. She turned, expecting a customer needing a quick purchase. But instead, it was a woman dressed in soft lace, her jewelry delicate, her poise unmistakable. It was Mrs. Stone. Grace froze, her hands still resting on the counter. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Then Mrs. Stone stepped forward with slow, deliberate grace. Her eyes scanned the bakery, its small size, the scent of freshly baked bread still lingering in the air, the flour-dusted floor, and finally, Grace herself. "Your Grace," she said, not as a question, but as confirmation. Grace straightened. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Stone looked at her, not unkindly, but with the calm precision of someone used to control. "I didn't come here to argue," she said. "Or to insult you." Grace said nothing, only nodded slightly. "I came to see for myself," Mrs. Stone continued. "To understand what my son gave everything up for." Grace's heart beat faster, but her voice was steady. "He didn't give everything up. He just chose something different." Mrs. Stone studied her, her expression unreadable. "You changed him." "No," Grace said gently. "He changed himself. I just saw him when others didn't." The room was silent again. Then, unexpectedly, Mrs. Stone let out a soft sigh. "He smiles more now," she said. "His eyes. They don't carry the same weight anymore." Grace blinked, surprised. "I still don't understand all of it," Mrs. Stone admitted. "But I see it. I see the difference in him. And for what it's worth, thank you." Grace's lips parted slightly, unsure of what to say. "I didn't do anything grand." "You did enough," Mrs. Stone replied. Then she looked around again, her tone lighter than before. "So this is where it all started?" Grace nodded. Mrs. Stone gave a soft smile. "Maybe someday you'll show me the new place." Grace hesitated, then nodded. "You're welcome any time." With a graceful turn, Mrs. Stone walked to the door, paused and glanced back. "You remind me of someone I used to be, before the world convinced me I had to be someone else." Then she left, leaving Grace standing in the warm silence, her thoughts spinning. Later that evening, Samuel met Grace near the construction site, carrying 2 small cartons of takeout and a bottle of chilled malt. They sat on a low wooden beam, the frame of their future bakery stretching around them like the bones of a dream. She told him about the visit. Samuel was quiet at first, then smiled slowly. "She came." Grace nodded. "She didn't come to fight. She came to understand." He exhaled. "That's more than I hoped for." They clinked their malt bottles together gently and sat watching the sun drop behind the half-built walls, painting everything in orange and gold. Samuel looked over at her. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" Grace turned to him, her eyes soft and steady. "Yes," she said. "And this time, we both get to write the story." He reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining easily, naturally. No promises were made out loud. No big declarations. Just 2 people sitting side by side, in the quiet after the storm, building something real. Love, freedom, and a future they chose. Together the door opened quietly behind her. Grace turned, expecting a customer, but standing there was Samuel's mother. She froze. Mrs. Stone stepped in, graceful as ever, but this time there was no sharpness in her gaze. Only softness, something almost unfamiliar. "Good afternoon," she said. "Good afternoon, Ma," Grace replied, her voice low. "I hope it's okay that I came." Grace nodded slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes, Ma. Please have a seat." But Mrs. Stone didn't sit. She stepped closer, then paused as if uncertain. "I fought you," she said quietly. "I told my son you weren't right for him. That his father would have wanted better. Someone better." Grace's heart pounded, but she remained still. "I watched Samuel chase success for so long. He achieved everything, except peace." Her eyes drifted around the bakery, its quiet charm, its shelves filled with warm loaves and honest effort, then landed back on Grace. "But now I see it. I see how he laughs. How he speaks like himself again." Grace didn't know what to say. Mrs. Stone stepped closer and gently reached for her hand. "I was wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "You gave my son something no amount of money ever could. You gave him peace." Tears welled in Grace's eyes. She nodded softly. "Thank you, Ma." They stood there quietly. No judgment, no distance. Just a mother letting go of pride, and a woman holding on to grace. In that moment, something unspoken healed between them. Days passed gently. Construction of the new bakery moved swiftly, and life with Samuel settled into a rhythm. Peaceful, joyful, filled with purpose. But peace doesn't always last without interruption. One evening, while rinsing dishes in the back room, Grace's phone rang. She grabbed a towel and answered without checking the caller. "Hello." There was a pause, then a voice she hadn't heard in a long time. "Grace." "It's me, David." Her stomach twisted. "What do you want?" she asked, sharp and guarded. "I heard about you," he said, trying to sound casual. "Just thought maybe we could talk. Catch up." Grace's throat tightened. His voice brought back the hurt, the lies, the emptiness he left behind. "There's nothing to catch up on," she said calmly. "Come on," he pushed. "Don't be like that." I was your first. That's still something, right? She ended the call without a word. That night, she sat beside Samuel on the steps of their half-built bakery. He noticed her silence. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then spoke. "My ex called. David." Samuel's eyes darkened slightly. She took a breath. "I didn't think it would affect me. But hearing his voice, it reminded me of how small he made me feel. How he cheated, lied, and somehow made it my fault." Samuel didn't interrupt. Instead, he reached for her hand. "Thank you for telling me," he said softly. She leaned against him, her voice barely a whisper. "He doesn't get to ruin this, right?" He looked at her. "Not while I'm here." The next day, Samuel made a quiet call. He didn't like secrets, and he hated danger. He had a friend look into David's recent past, not to start trouble, but to protect the peace Grace had earned. By evening, the report arrived. David's last relationship had ended in violence, emotional and physical. Samuel read every line, jaw tight, eyes sharp, but his mind steady. 2 days later, Samuel met David in a quiet parking lot. David leaned on his old car, smirking. "So you're the new guy?" Samuel didn't smile. "I know what you did to Grace. I know who you really are." David scoffed. "What? You think your money makes you her bodyguard now?" "No," Samuel said, his voice calm. "But love makes me her protector. And I'm telling you, stay away from her." David laughed, but Samuel didn't flinch. The weight of his stillness made David uneasy. "If you call her again," Samuel said quietly, "next time I won't be this polite." David's smile faded. He muttered something under his breath, climbed into his car, and drove off. Samuel stood still until he was gone. After that, the days returned to quiet. David didn't call again, and the shadows of the past faded. But something lingered on Grace's mind. She kept thinking about Mrs. Stone, how she had come not with judgment, but worry. Not just for her son, but for the company he had walked away from. One afternoon, while Samuel carried a heavy sack of flour into the back, she finally said it. "You should go back." He paused, surprised. "Back where?" "To the company," she said gently. "You built it. You know it better than anyone. And your mother, she's not against us anymore. She sees us now." He set the sack down and wiped his hands. "I'm happy here," he said. "I don't miss the suits or the meetings." "I know," Grace replied. "And I love this version of you. But maybe it's not about choosing one life or the other. Maybe you can find balance. And maybe the company needs the man you've become." Samuel looked at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." 2 days later, he sat across from his mother in the bright, quiet sitting room where so many hard words had once been spoken. "I talked to Grace," she said at last. "She's strong. Soft but strong." Samuel nodded. "She's everything I didn't know I needed." His mother met his eyes. "I was afraid of losing you. Afraid of someone I didn't understand." "You never lost me, Mom," he said gently. "You just didn't see me." She nodded. "I see you now." They talked for over an hour. Not just about what had been, but about what could be. That evening, the sky turned gold over the ocean. Samuel had prepared a quiet dinner on the beach. A table, some candles, and the soft rhythm of waves in the distance. Grace arrived in a flowing dress, her smile shy, her eyes bright. "You did this?" she asked, touched. He nodded. "I wanted you to see what our life could feel like, when it's just us." As they sat and watched the sunset fade, Samuel stood, reached into his pocket, and knelt before her. "Grace," he said, voice full of emotion, "do you see yourself with me? In 10 years, 20, even 50? Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "I do." He smiled and opened the small box. The ring sparkled under the stars. Before he could say another word, she wrapped her arms around him. Yes. The wedding came soon after. No grandeur. No gold-lined invitations. Just love. They married by the sea, at the same spot where he had proposed. The breeze was soft. The water calm. White flowers lined the sandy aisle. The guests were few but dear. Mama Grace stood in tears. Mrs. Stone smiled with pride. 2 worlds had become one. Grace walked barefoot in a white gown, simple and perfect. Samuel stood waiting, his suit plain, his eyes full of love. "You look like the love of my life," he whispered when she reached him. "And you look like home," she replied. When it was time, their vows were short. "I choose you always," Samuel said. "I choose you without fear," Grace replied. Their kiss sealed it. The crowd clapped, cried, laughed, but above all, felt peace. 2 months later, sunlight poured into the wide glass windows of their new bakery. The scent of fresh bread and cinnamon filled the air. Grace moved confidently, arranging cupcakes with care while her staff bustled around her. Her dream had come true. Above the door, golden letters read, "Grace's Place." Beside it, a smaller sign read, "In partnership with Stoneway Boutique Hotel." Next door, Samuel stood in the boutique hotel lobby, calm and steady. He had returned to the Stoneway Group, not to escape, but to lead with clarity, balance, and heart. He glanced toward the bakery, and his smile said it all. Later, on the hotel rooftop garden, Grace found him watching the breeze dance across the city. She leaned against him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." Samuel looked at her, warm and steady. "I always have. And thank you for paying my fare when no one else would." They both laughed gently. Fingers intertwined. Hearts full. From a simple bus ride to a life built in love, their story had come full circle. And now, they were only just beginning. If you were in Grace's place that day, would you have done the same? Let us know in the comments. And share this story with someone who still believes love can grow from the smallest, kindest moments.